The smoke that we see billowing from the engine room at the smokestack is an indicator that a hard port turn maneuver was sought by the navigator, by the person who was steering the ship. The reason why they wanted to do that is they wanted to turn and avoid collision, ostensibly. That's what they wanted to do. So they had to make a hard left-hand turn, and I understand that coupled with that, they had to drop the anchor on the port side so that they could achieve a very tight pivot. Okay. Now, to steer a ship that's so heavy, steerage requires a bit of velocity, because if you're moving very slow, it's very hard to steer a vessel that heavy. So that could account for the maneuver. I would still entertain the possibility that it was an accident, because we don't know either way. We don't know whether it was an accident or whether it was intentional. I woke up with that feeling this morning that, we don't really know either way. Now, the video, what it shows, it tells a huge story. From this angle, I really like the magnification, Lewis, because you can see the front of the ship hitting that. I was calling it a sawhorse yesterday. I think I'm going to stick to using that term, because it's something that viewers on the screen can see. Those support pillars that hold the main span of the bridge on either side do kind of resemble a sawhorse. That sawhorse is built out of reinforced concrete, and the vintage of the reinforced concrete comes from the early 1970s, when the material of reinforced concrete wasn't really understood in as extensive sense as it is today. Today, we understand a phenomenon called ductility, which is the ability of a material to absorb continuing deformation while maintaining its strength characteristics. The best material at ductility is steel. Concrete, as people may not appreciate, plain concrete is very brittle. I mean, you apply a little bit of force to it, it will do what's called rupture. It will suddenly give away. When you add reinforcing steel to the concrete, it becomes a whole new material, reinforced concrete. The reinforced concrete of the vintage of early 1970s, late 60s, which is the vintage of this bridge, did not incorporate the principle of ductile design as well as we can do today. And evidence of that is, it's hard to get a good view on it, but we can sort of imagine what's going on. There's a kind of a caisson at the base of that sawhorse on the water level, and it's sort of a rectangle. The bow of the ship either impacted that caisson ring that's on the level of the water and skidded past it slightly at a glancing angle, and the leading part of the bow struck the reinforced concrete pillar. And there's no redundancy in that structure. If you take out one of the four legs of a sawhorse, the sawhorse will instantly collapse, even if it's sitting under its own weight. So effectively, there is no redundancy in this structure. Many people have been. Am I rambling on here too much?
No, you're doing great.
Okay, many people have been calling foul about this whole incident, that the piers were not constructed with caissons as they are in other bridges, or excuse me, with fenders. And a fender is basically a structure, typically a gravity structure, pile of gravel, say, sprinkled around that support that forms a bit of an island. So if the ship runs up to that fender, it's going to ride up on the fender without and lose its velocity. It'll be stopped without impacting the structure. So people were rightly criticizing it that it didn't have that, and it really didn't. It's a situation where a good placed blow by the ship could take out one of those concrete pillars. Now,
Yeah, real quick, EG.
yeah,
If I'm correct, I believe the new regulations on supporting structures like this were after a slew of earthquakes in the mid to late 70s. Is that right? They came with new regulations.
It depends on what regulations you're talking about. There are
Hmm.
various bridge codes in various countries. The states tend to assume the responsibility for the design of bridges in the United States, so it's a state-based code. And yes, you're correct in the sense that seismic events have driven the design of bridge infrastructure, and they have greatly impacted the bridge codes. And now, that advent of ductility and the ability of a structure to undergo deformation and absorb earthquake energy without actually collapsing or drifting too much is now built into the structural design of modern bridges. This was not such a modern bridge. There is really not much ability of this to undergo absorb displacement imposed on the structure, which earthquake, that's really what an earthquake is. It is a sudden, cyclic, chaotic, violent shaking of the ground, imposing a displacement on the base of a structure. And if you design your structure properly, you had better hope that the superstructure can join the base for a ride without coming apart.
Hmm.
An aspect like that would have definitely aided this bridge, but it's too much to ask for because the impact from 100,000 ton vessel, God, it's more than anybody can ask for. It's better to build, way cheaper to build a fender around it, right?
Right.
So that was clearly missing. So people are right to point that out, but we also have to be kind and not condescend to posterity too much, and appreciate that the designers in the day were doing the best they could given the rules they had.
Right, right, agreed. Yeah, and my take is it to me it actually absolutely looks intentional, but we don't know until there's a real investigation. The challenge is they've already said that it's going to take at least a year to two to determine it, which means that indicates a cover up to me because it should never take a year to two. It should take a week or two to determine exactly if this was done intentionally. But that being said, here's another video, and this is just showing when the lights are coming off and a farther back of the bridge. We'll see if we can find anything on this one. And then, believe it or not, I even have some better close-ups than we just saw.
Oh, good.
So they're showing there. It says obviously power lost first time.
Time lapse.
Yep, yep, for sure. And watch the slip. That's what I was talking about. And this is maybe that could have been when the anchor engaged too, like you're saying. And
Yeah.
of course, with increasing the engine power, because you can see the smoke.
I think that anchor, if they did drop the anchor, it might have dragged
For a
for
while.
the river isn't that deep there.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then of course the collapse.